Chapter 1333. This responsibility sounded very simple. From now on, she would only recognize the Jing family. No matter who asked, she could no longer be the daughter of the swindler from before. In addition, she would also have to pass down the inheritance. In the future, she would have to try her best to think of the Jing family. There were many rules. However, Jing Fan was completely stunned. She had never thought that Jing Yunjiao would ask her this question, because she had always been clear about her own identity. Even though she called Jing Yunjiao Jejie, she had never dared to ask for anything. After all, to be able to obtain so much was already considered lucky. After her biological parents were released from prison, she met them once. They were even worse than before. Their days were not good, so they simply married her biological sister off for a betrothal gift of tens of thousands of yuan. As for her younger brother, who was like a little emperor, he was still very unruly. At such a young age, he was still cheating. She had once thought that if her parents repented, she would be willing to abandon all the identity that Jing Yunjiao had given her and go back to give her parents a chance. She would support them until they grew old and repay this bit of blood debt. However, reality disappointed her and made her even more determined about her future path. "Are you unwilling?" Jing Yunjiao saw that she was in a daze and asked again. Jing Fan immediately reacted. She instantly sobbed and nodded. I'm willing." She didn't know what kind of big family the Jing family was, but she knew that as long as she agreed, she should have a family. Moreover, it wouldn't be the family that only knew how to bully and scold her. She didn't have to be afraid that one day, the people around her would hate her. She didn't have to worry about floating around like a leaf of duckweed without a foundation. All this time, she had worked so hard and was so worried and afraid because she wanted to obtain recognition, especially from Jing Yunjiao. Jing Yunjiao also smiled and reached out to pat her shoulder. "All right, don't cry. After today, I will ask the Jing clan elders to help you enter the genealogy." Although it was only a genealogy, it could not be underestimated. It would record her name and her life story. As long as she did not do anything to betray the Jing family, no matter how hard her life was in the future, she would still have a way out. Just like her father, Jing Tianyi, who was not on the genealogy. So even though he was a member of the Jing family, he still had no one to protect him. She, on the other hand, was listed on the genealogy after Yu Yufu met her. Otherwise, the elders of the Jing family would not have agreed to unite with her so easily. Jing Fan nodded. Xiao Haiqing breathed a sigh of relief. Although they were both from the Jing family, they were not of the same bloodline, so there was nothing to worry about. When she first saw Jing Fan's timid and weak face, she felt a little unhappy. But now that she looked at him again, she couldn't help but mock herself. Jing Fan was different from her or Jing Yunjiao. It was normal for him to be timid. She was the one who always thought too badly of others. Jing Yunjiao didn't talk for long, but the two of them were already crying. Xiao Haiqing couldn't help but tease her. Jing Yunjiao could understand that Jing Fan was more confident than before. In the past, her self-introduction was very weak. When people asked her where she was from, she could only say that she was from Yang Province. No matter if it was her parents or family, they were all blank. But she was not an orphan. But now, she finally had a background. Jing Yunjiao also knew that she was partly responsible for Jing Fan's panic in front of her. Because back then, he only gave her a name and transferred her to a school, but he never gave her a proper position. At that time, Jing Fan was only a 14-year-old girl. It was not easy for her to not go to extremes. Chapter 1334. Since Jing Yunjiao had decided to let Jing Fan join the Jing clan, he would naturally do as he said. After the commotion with the crowd, he told Jing Rong about this matter the next morning. After so many years, the number of descendants in the Jing family had been dwindling, especially during the time of war. It caused many of the side branches to completely lose their descendants. If there was someone to inherit the family, it would naturally be a good thing. However, the Jing family was still a big family after all. It was impossible for them to casually allow an outsider to enter the family. If it was under normal circumstances, they would also have some requirements for Jing Fan, such as his medical skills. However, with Jing Yunjiao's recommendation, An elder like Jing Rong also had to give some face. After meeting Jing Fan and explaining the Jing family's rules, he was no longer overly picky. It wasn't troublesome to add a name to the family tree. After all, it wasn't the old era where they had to perform various rituals. Now, all they had to do was burn incense for their ancestors and meet some elders. Even so, after a few days of torment, Jing Fan still looked like he couldn't take it anymore. However, he was still in good spirits. His whole body radiated a youthful aura, which made people feel more comfortable looking at him. "Sister, I have something to tell you." After the ceremony, Jing Fan said in private. His expression was nervous and expectant. Since Jing Fan was now a member of the Jing clan, it wasn't appropriate for him to continue living in Pak Yuan and Xiong Jin's house. Moreover, Xiong Jin was pregnant now and their relationship would definitely warm up quickly. It wasn't good for a girl like Jing Fan to be a third wheel every day. The Jing clan's old residence was ridiculously big. Hence, Jing Yunjiao had someone prepare a room for Jing Fan in the auxiliary building for him to stay in temporarily. Other than her, Xiao Haiqing's room was also prepared in the past 2 days. Haiqing owed her a lot of debt. Hence, other than the necessary expenses, he didn't spend much money. Jing Yunjiao was afraid that she wouldn't treat him well. Hence, he tied her to his side to live with him. There was no one else in the Jing clan's old residence. Even the elders of the Shu family didn't come. Hence, Xiao Haiqing agreed without any pressure. "If you have anything to say, just say it. There's no need to be so polite," Jing Yunjiao said as he teased Black King. Jing Fan was a little hesitant, but after a while, he continued, "I recently got a boyfriend." Jing Yunjiao was stunned and looked at her in surprise. Jing Fan was usually a very boring person. It was hard to imagine that someone with her personality would fall in love so early. Although she was already in university, she had skipped a grade, so she was still a minor. Of course, although she had met Li Xiaoyun early, her heart was not that of a little girl. "How are they?" Jing Yunjiao asked. "He's really a good person and always cares about me. Every day when I go to school, he sends me breakfast and even takes the initiative to reserve a seat for me in the library. He knows very well what classes I have and has never minded my background. Sis, actually, I just want to focus on my studies, but he's really good to me, so I couldn't help but agree to his confession." Jing Fan mustered up his courage and said. Jing Yunjiao had seen a lot of pure love in university. Hence, when he heard her say this, he didn't feel dissatisfied. "Since you're moved, then there's no problem. However, don't be too infatuated with a guy. Your studies are more important." After Jing Yunjiao finished speaking, he felt as if he had aged a few decades. When he spoke, he sounded like an elder. Chapter 1335. As soon as Jing Yunjiao relented, Jing Fan let out a sigh of relief. Then, he suddenly remembered something and said, "Oh right, Han Nan is in the same class as you." Before he could finish, Jing Yunjiao's expression froze. Her eyes flashed with coldness as she retracted her hand that was playing with Hei Di. "Han Nan? He's your boyfriend?" Jing Yunjiao asked. Jing Yunjiao's heart skipped a beat. She didn't quite understand. The change in her attitude was too sudden. It was as if she had a big problem with Han Nan. However, she had always heard Han Nan praise Jing Yunjiao. Logically speaking, the two of them were just ordinary classmates. "How did you two meet?" Jing Yunjiao asked seriously as she sat down. Jing Fan panicked. "A few months ago, when I went to look for you, I bumped into him as soon as I came out of the dormitory. We chatted for a bit and I found out he was your classmate. After a while, we became familiar with each other. She usually kept her distance from boys, but Han Nan was very aggressive. He showed up on time every morning and was very gentle. Before she even agreed to Han Nan, everyone in the class already thought that Han Nan was her boyfriend. At first, she wasn't moved, but her friends in the dormitory kept praising him. As time passed, Han Nan gave her a different feeling. Other than Jing Yunjiao and Xiong Jin, there had never been anyone who treated her so wholeheartedly. From Han Nan's body, she could feel a kind of warmth that made her sink deeper and deeper. Every time she thought of him, her heart would feel like it was on a roller coaster, making her crazy and intoxicated. Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips and asked Jing Fan to tell her everything that had happened between the two of them. She felt that Han Nan's feelings came too suddenly. She was very sensitive. When Han Nan was in class, he didn't restrain his passionate gaze. If he still paid attention to her like before, then why did he suddenly care about Jing Fan so much? Jing Yunjiao secretly shook her head. She didn't believe it at all. It wasn't that Jing Fan wasn't charming, but Han Nan didn't look like he was in love at all. Little Fan, does Han Nan know that you know me? Jing Yunjiao asked after a moment of consideration. Jing Fan shook his head firmly. He doesn't know. I didn't tell anyone about this. She didn't know why, but she couldn't help but reveal her past identity. However, she didn't want to publicize her relationship with Jing Yunjiao, even to Han Nan. In my opinion, Han Nan is not suitable for you. After a while, Jing Yunjiao said. Seeing her pale face, Jing Yunjiao said, since I've recognized you as my sister, it's for your own good. Han Nan is too stubborn, and he has some old grudges with me. From what you said just now, he hid this from you, so I'm sure he doesn't have any good intentions. Since Han Nan didn't know about their relationship, then perhaps it was because of Jing Fan's title as Yang Province's top scholar. He was a stubborn and twisted person. It was very likely that he shifted his target to Jing Fan in order to satisfy his perverted sense of accomplishment. Although Jing Fan's personality was still lacking, he was still a very kind and simple person. She didn't want her to fall into the hands of a scumbag. Their relationship hadn't developed for long, so if she killed him now, there was still a chance for her to stay. Chapter 1336. Jing Yunjiao's attitude was straightforward. She didn't hide the reason why she made this decision for Jing Fan's sake. She had always been like this. Instead of being secretive, it was better to be straightforward and avoid any misunderstandings. She believed that if Jing Fan was really sensible, he should be able to understand the stakes involved. Sis. No way, right? Do you have any old grudges? But he said that he was also your fan. He also said that you two often did classwork together in class and worked together very happily. Oh right, he didn't know my identity, so he said that he could introduce me to you in the future. He shouldn't have deliberately used you to lie to me. Jing Fan was completely dumbfounded and couldn't react in time. The human heart is unpredictable. Jing Yunjiao looked at her and shook her head. She said, if you don't believe what I said, I can take you to my class to ask around. I guarantee that everyone knows about the conflict between me and him. Of course, just because we have a conflict doesn't mean that you guys can't be together. But the problem is that he definitely isn't sincere towards you. She believed that the human heart was unpredictable, but she insisted on letting Jing Fan enter the Jing Corporation. She also believed in her own judgment and her kind nature. She didn't want a person like her to slowly become unfamiliar because of some materialistic things. Jing Fan's body trembled. She didn't believe the words of others, but how could she not believe Jing Yunjiao's words? She had no reason to lie to her, but why did Han Nan, if she had known about this a few months earlier, or even 2 months earlier, she wouldn't have felt so bad. Hence, in this short period of time, she had fallen too deep. She couldn't imagine that behind that gentle and handsome face, there was a malicious intent hidden with ulterior motives. Jing Fan's voice was hoarse. She lowered her head. I'll go ask him. Sis, he's really good to me, Jing Yunjiao sighed. How about this, it's impossible for you to cut ties with him. I'll give you a chance to make your own decision. Since you two are a couple, you will definitely meet each other even during the holidays. Next time, find a chance to tell him about our relationship and see how he reacts. Jing Yunjiao thought for a moment and continued, but every time you meet, you have to make sure that it's in a safe place with a lot of people around. It can't be too remote. Also, it's best if you record it. Can you do that? Jing Yunjiao was absolutely certain that once Han Nan found out about their relationship, not only would he not break up, but he would also stick closer to him. He might even use some extreme methods to force Jing Fan to do certain things for him. Women in love were all stupid. If Jing Fan didn't know, he would definitely be used. Jing Fan also thought about it. His eyes were bloodshot, but he still nodded in the end. He took the recording pen from Jing Yunjiao's hands in a daze. She thought that she was the happiest person in the world right now. She had an identity that no one would look down on. She had also become Jing Yunjiao's legitimate sister, and she even had a gentle and handsome boyfriend. But who would have thought? Jing Fan gritted his teeth and clenched the recording pen in his hand. His emotions were complicated. Jing Yunjiao also felt that he was a little cruel, but he didn't regret his decision. Then, he took the initiative to tell Jing Fan what the so-called conflict between the two of them was. After Jing Fan heard this, his eyes were a little serious. He was silent. The naive and innocent expression slowly disappeared and was replaced by sadness and confusion. Chapter 1337. 2 days later, Jing Fan wore a thick down jacket and went to the appointment. Before she left, she told Jing Yunjiao that she would be there. Jing Yunjiao just nodded and didn't say anything else. After all, it was better for her to see it with her own eyes. Both of them were ordinary students, and the location of their date wasn't some expensive place, but an ordinary food street. Han Nan arrived early. He was wearing a black down jacket, and his fair face was a little red from the cold. When he saw Jing Fan walk over, he immediately became eager and rushed forward to help her carry her bag. Xiao Fan, how did you get here? School is about to start. Everyone is taking advantage of the time to come out and play. The traffic is especially bad, Han Nan said. Jing Fan couldn't believe that the boy in front of her was such a thick-skinned person. When she saw him, she felt her heart flutter and her heart beat wildly. However, she had no choice but to test what kind of person he was. If only people's feelings could be controlled. It would be good if he didn't immediately take back his heart. My sister is dropping me off somewhere nearby, Jing Fan lied. The Jing family had a driver. Why would Jing Yunjiao need to drop her off personally? She was just looking for an excuse to tell him the truth. Your sister. Didn't you say that you only have one brother and one sister and that you don't contact them anymore? Han Nan was stunned. He suddenly had a strange premonition. This premonition had been there ever since he saw Jing Fan. At this moment, it was the strongest. Actually, I've been hiding something from you. Jing Yunjiao is my sister. However, she's not my biological sister. We just happen to have the same surname. Back then, my parents were sent to prison for harming her. However, she was very good to me. She changed my name and school for me. She was my sponsor. Without her, I wouldn't have been able to go to university, Jing Fan said seriously. She would always remember that day. The day her life changed completely. There was no endless abuse and slavery. There were no parents who favored boys over girls. There were no chores that she couldn't do or siblings that were hard to take care of. The future was different. When Han Nan heard this, his breathing stopped for a moment. Soon, a trace of ecstasy appeared in his heart. However, he quickly restrained himself. Then did you tell her that I'm your boyfriend? Jing Fan bit his lips and shook his head. That's good. Xiao Fan, you don't know this, but your sister is very possessive. She and I are very close, and a lot of people in class think that we're a golden couple. But I'm really just friends with her. If she finds out that I'm with you, I'm afraid that she won't treat you well, Han Nan quickly said. Jing Fan's eyes flashed. He couldn't believe what he had just heard. At first, she still had some fantasies in her heart. She hoped that it was all a misunderstanding, or that his thick skin was all in the past. Now, he had completely woken up and was sincere to her. But now, he actually said that he and Jing Yunjiao were a golden couple. She didn't know much about other things, but she still knew a little about Jing Yunjiao. Jing Yunjiao was a cold and aloof woman. She had a lot of friends by her side, both male and female, but she had never been too intimate with any of them. Moreover, she had just met her mysterious brother-in-law. Even if she didn't observe him closely, she knew that he was stronger than Han Nan, and not just by a little bit. If Jing Yunjiao was really possessive of a man, then she could only believe that the man was her brother-in-law, Li Xiaoyun, and not Han Nan. Chapter 1338. Jing Fan's lips couldn't help but tremble. Her eyes filled with tears. It was as if she could hear the sound of her heart breaking. "Little Fan, did you hear what I said?" Han Nan asked again. Jing Fan nodded. "Don't worry. Even though Jing Yunjiao is very outstanding, in my eyes, she's not as good as you. You're kind and pure, but actually, she's a bit vicious. Everyone in class knows that. That's why you have to be careful. Even though she sponsored you, she's just a hypocrite. You have to plan for yourself and guard against her. Don't let her do anything to hurt you," Han Nan said. The reason he dared to say these words so boldly was because he didn't believe that Jing Fan didn't have any resentment in her heart. They both had the same surname, Jing, and were both Yang Province's top scorer. Jing Yunjiao's radiance was boundless, her family background was not poor, and everyone adored her. On the other hand, Jing Fan was just an extremely ordinary student. She was younger than Jing Yunjiao by 2 years and had received Jing Yunjiao's financial support. That long meant that she would have to submit to Jing Yunjiao for the rest of her life. She would always be in the shadows and could only be Jing Yunjiao's shadow. Who would be willing? He felt that no matter how pure and kind Jing Fan was, there was no way she would be so willing. However, Han Nan underestimated a person's faith. Jing Yunjiao was Jing Fan's faith. He was the pillar of her life and her guiding light. Even though Jing Yunjiao hadn't seen her many times over the years, even though Jing Yunjiao didn't really care about her, she received more from him than she did from her biological parents. She knew in her heart that without Jing Yunjiao, Xiong Jin wouldn't have taken care of her like that. She remembered her kindness very clearly from the beginning. She suddenly wanted to raise her trembling hand and slap him, but she quickly restrained herself. She looked up at the boy who made her heart ache, her senior, and said, "I know, I'll be careful. But why didn't you say that before?" "Before? I don't like to talk bad about people behind their backs. If it weren't for the special relationship between you two, I wouldn't have reminded you. Xiao Fan, you don't think I'm someone who likes to gossip, do you?" Han Nan said as he pinched her cheeks. Jing Fan endured the discomfort and shook his head. "That's good." Han Nan let out a sigh of relief. He quickly dragged Jing Yunjiao along and bought her favorite candy, chestnuts. Then, as if he wasn't careful, he said, "Xiao Fan, what does Jing Yunjiao do during the holidays? For example, do you know where to go and who to meet? I've heard some people say that her private life is a bit messy. Could it be true? Anyway, I've seen 2 or 3 men pick her up together, and they don't look too decent." When Jing Fan heard this, his face tensed up. That feeling was like eating a dead fly. No matter how tasty the chestnut was, it was tasteless. "She doesn't do anything at home. She just goes out to play occasionally," Jing Fan said casually. Then, "Can I ask you for a favor?" Han Nan thought for a moment and asked. In front of Jing Fan, he had enough confidence. Although he had attacked her fiercely before and seemed to be infatuated with her, after he got her, this innocent little girl had fallen even faster. She had already given up more and more. He could even feel her burning gaze that made her want to give up everything. He believed that as long as he had enough reason, Jing Fan would definitely be used by him. Chapter 1339. Han Nan's face was brimming with confidence. He originally thought that he had only found a substitute for Jing Yunjiao and wanted to vent the grievances in his heart, but this sudden surprise gave him a feeling of happiness and satisfaction. As long as everything went well, he believed that it wouldn't be long before Jing Yunjiao was his. "What is it? Tell me." Jing Fan's voice was soft, as if he was waiting for something. "I want you to ask your sister out alone. Next time I'll give you some medicine so you can tie her up and find a secluded place. I want to talk to her, but don't misunderstand. The reason why I want you to drug her isn't because I want to do anything bad. The main reason is because your sister, she's too violent." Han Nan smiled bitterly and continued, "I'm afraid that before I can explain, she'll knock me out. I must prove to her that my love for you is real. I hope she can understand that it's impossible between us. What do you think?" Han Nan continued. Women in love are easy to be stupid, but she wasn't an idiot. Believe Han Nan's words. Even if Jing Yunjiao hadn't reminded her, she wouldn't have believed his sincerity. This was because his attitude was too different from usual. Perhaps it was because he suddenly knew about her relationship with Jing Yunjiao that he used such a clumsy trick. As soon as Han Nan finished speaking, he saw Jing Fan's pupils dilate a bit. He immediately felt that he was being a bit too impatient. Afraid that Jing Fan would have some suspicions, he quickly said, "I was just joking with you. I'm not a pervert, how could I do something like that?" He would use that trick in the future, but only when Jing Fan was even more dead set on him. The way to make a woman dead set on him was very simple. Take her body, then her heart wouldn't be able to escape. After all, Jing Fan was still so young, how easy would it be to trick him? Jing Fan's brows relaxed. Unknowingly, the two of them were separated by an arm's length. They weren't shoulder to shoulder like before. "Anan, take a guess. If my sister didn't want me to be with you, who would I choose?" After a while, Jing Fan raised his head and asked with tears in his eyes. Are you going to abandon me?" "Lil Fan, no matter what happens, we have to face it together. If she's not happy about it, then I'll work even harder to make you happy. If she's really looking out for you, then I have nothing to say," Han Nan said passionately. Even though he said that, he was looking down on them in his heart. Who should he choose? Between a boyfriend and a sponsor who suppressed her in every way, it was obvious that the former was closer. Was there a need to guess? Especially for young girls, not to mention Jing Yunjiao, who was not related to her by blood, even her biological parents might not be more important than her boyfriend. "Then you think I'll choose you?" Jing Fan's twinkling eyes curved as he smiled. "Isn't that the case?" Han Nan said confidently. Jing Fan slowly lowered his head and clenched his fists. "Of course, not." Han Nan had never experienced the feeling of being rescued from a swamp, so he would never be able to understand what she was thinking. What her parents owed Jing Yunjiao, she also owed Jing Yunjiao. She would never be able to repay her in this lifetime. She knew that she didn't have the ability and wasn't special enough to help Jing Yunjiao, but these things had never stopped her from getting closer to conviction. Jing Fan's tears fell silently. As he lowered his head, he tried to calm himself down. After a while, he said softly, "I'm not feeling well today. Can we find a place to rest?" Chapter 1340. Jing Fan was still young, and his appearance was already delicate and pretty. The way he spoke softly with a pale face indeed made people feel pity for him. Han Nan was also just a normal guy. When he was with Jing Yunjiao, he only experienced setbacks and inferiority. Now that he saw Jing Fan's delicate appearance, his previous self-confidence was instantly restored. His heart was stirred up, and he felt a little excited. "Xiao Fan, where are you feeling unwell? Do you want me to go to the hotel next door and find a room for you to rest?" Han Nan asked tentatively. There were many places to rest. If it was a normal boy, he definitely wouldn't think of a hotel. He would only think of a restaurant. Although Jing Fan was still young, the children of the poor had to take care of the family at an early age. She was more sensible than others since she was young. Moreover, she had learned a lot from Xiong-jin. Even though she had not seen many boys, she knew what Han Nan was thinking right now. She couldn't help but feel a little ironic. If not for Jing Yunjiao's reminder, she wouldn't even know that Han Nan had such an anxious side. In the past, when she looked at Han Nan, she always felt that he was good in all aspects. He was gentle, handsome, and tolerant of her. He was like a prince on a white horse in a fairy tale. If he had made this suggestion before, she wouldn't have given it much thought. But now, she had already made up her mind. Looking at Han Nan again, she couldn't find any excuses for him. She couldn't help but clench her fists. Her eyes flashed with determination. After a while, she nodded. Han Nan didn't expect Jing Fan to agree. After all, for a girl of her age, getting a room in a hotel was a very sensitive matter. Han Nan subconsciously touched his nose. He suddenly felt a little disdainful. Jing Fan looked very pure, but in reality, she shouldn't be a proper girl. Otherwise, how could she have taken the bait so easily? Just as he was thinking, he saw Jing Fan's body go limp and she fainted. Han Nan was stunned. He reached out to touch her forehead and found that it was boiling hot. Just a moment ago, her face was deathly pale, but now it was bright red. But it was still a little tempting. Her figure wasn't as well proportioned as Jing Yunzhao's. She was slightly shriveled, but fortunately, her face was rosy and her skin was white. Her long hair fluttered in the wind, making her look like a fairy. Han Nan smacked his lips. This was a rare opportunity. Anyway, she had agreed to go to the hotel to rest. Now that she had fainted, no matter what he did, Jing Fan wouldn't be able to resist. By the time she woke up, what was done would be done. He didn't believe that Jing Fan would be angry with him. After conquering her body, her heart would naturally submit as well. Besides, the two of them were originally boyfriend and girlfriend. In this day and age, wasn't it normal for something to happen? Thinking of this, Han Nan's courage grew a lot. He directly carried Jing Fan and turned to the side road. Originally, he wanted to go to a hotel, but after thinking about it carefully, he realized that if he brought an unconscious girl there, it would definitely arouse suspicion. So, he found a small hotel to stay in. More importantly, this hotel was very cheap. Jing Fan felt Han Nan carrying her step by step. Later, she seemed to have gone upstairs. Not long after she heard the sound of the door closing, she put him down. Only the two of them were left in the room. Han Nan's heart was excited and a little crazy. Looking at Jing Fan's face, his mind couldn't help but think of Jing Yunzhao. Chapter 1341. Jing Fan turned out to be Jing Yunzhao's sister. His luck was really good. It seemed like even God couldn't stand Jing Yunzhao and sent his sister to help him. Xiao Fan, don't blame me. If you want to blame someone, blame Jing Yunzhao. I really like her. Do you know what kind of life I've been living for so long? I can't eat well, I can't sleep well, and I've lost a few pounds. My head is filled with her. But don't worry, I know you like me. I'll definitely treat you well. Once I get her, I'll dump her. Then, you'll be my legitimate girlfriend. As Han Nan spoke, his hand gently caressed Jing Fan's cheek. Then, he began to take off his clothes. Jing Fan felt a slight chill on her body. Only then did she open her eyes in a daze. The moment Han Nan was about to come over, she aimed her head at his head and viciously slammed it against his. Both of them felt dizzy. Jing Fan's body was weak to begin with, so she was about to pass out. But at this time, she gritted her teeth and suddenly took out her phone to aim at Han Nan. She took a few pictures, including the condoms that Han Nan bought at the hotel. She had heard every word of Han Nan's words clearly. If Han Nan only wanted to harm her, then she would feel that she was unlucky. After all, it had always been like this. The only time the heavens cared about her was when Jing Yunzhao appeared. But Han Nan wanted to use her to get close to Jing Yunzhao. She couldn't take it anymore. Even though the love in her heart had yet to dissipate, she loathed the fact that there was a man who was like a bedbug following Jing Yunzhao closely behind her. Only someone like brother-in-law was worthy of her sister. Han Nan, since he had that kind of idea, then he had to disappear. She didn't want any accidents to happen one day and his plan to succeed. Han Nan didn't know how to react. How could Jing Fan, who had fainted on the bed a moment ago, be so fierce now? She even took a picture of his naked body. But seeing this scene, no matter how stupid he was, he knew he had to fight for it. Without another word, he pounced on the condoms in her hands. Jing Fan had already expected this to happen. No matter what Han Nan did to her today, he was done for. If he stopped now or she escaped, then he would be charged with attempted rape. If he continued, then she would send him to jail even if he threatened her with a photo. Or if he hardened his heart and killed himself, then Han Nan's life would come to an end. A woman who had been betrayed by love would always do things beyond her expectations. In her eyes, she was not just helping Jing Yunzhao get rid of this scourge. More importantly, he was taking revenge for himself. Han Nan clearly knew that she had lived a life worse than an orphan. What she yearned for the most was the word sincerity. Yet, he insisted on using feelings to take advantage of her. Even though he knew that Jing Yunzhao was her sponsor, her sister, he still harbored ill intentions. Was he trying to make her a bad person? Did he want her to betray the only thing she believed in? Just because she was weaker and more pitiful than others, did she have to let him trample on her? At this moment, Jing Fan's eyes flashed with a trace of ruthlessness as he continued to fight with Han Nan. After all, Han Nan was a man and his hands were heavy. Thus, very quickly, there were bruises on Jing Fan's skin. Even her face was slapped a few times. Chapter 1342. After a short while, Jing Fan was at a disadvantage. She looked extremely pitiful. While she was struggling, Jing Fan said in a trembling voice, "Why are you doing this to me? To think that I trusted you so much. To think that she thought of him as the warm sun that illuminated her life. But it turned out that he was just a dark sore. Xiao Fan, stop fooling around. Didn't you agree to rest with me just now because you wanted to be with me? Don't worry, I'll definitely treat you well. Stop joking with me and give me the photo." Han Nan coaxed. He was also angry. What was this woman doing? She was scratching and scratching. Nonsense. I'm not feeling well. I'm still having a fever. If you really want me to rest, you should take me to the hospital. As she spoke, Jing Fan's tone suddenly changed. She said timidly, "Don't come over. If you come any closer, I'll call the police." Han Nan was confused. He didn't move, but just as he was thinking, the door was suddenly kicked open. A few police officers rushed in and arrested Han Nan without saying a word. At the same time, a female police officer rushed in front of Jing Fan. Seeing the bruises on her body, she looked at her sympathetically and quickly helped her put on her clothes. Jing Fan let out a sigh of relief. When Han Nan took off his clothes, she had already secretly called the police. It could be said that their conversation was heard by the police. As for the photo, it was just to confirm that she had pressed the button. She had fought with Han Nan for a long time. It was enough for the police to confirm her identity and her location. After all, Han Nan had carried her in so openly. It was already eye-catching. Plus, there was a police station nearby. There was almost a 70% chance that they would succeed. She didn't think that she would personally scheme against someone. Moreover, this person was the man she liked the most. The sadness was real. The tears were also real. They kept flowing. The police officer thought that she had been wronged, so he hurriedly comforted her. After a while, he saw that she had fainted again. Only then did he send her to the hospital. On one hand, they had to examine her injuries. On the other hand, her fever had to be treated. When Jing Yunjiao received the call from the police, he was stunned. His heart was in his mouth. What happened to Jing Fan? Jing Yunjiao asked hurriedly after knowing the other party's identity. It's like this. Jing Fan was abducted by a male classmate to a hotel and was almost raped by him. She's currently injured and has a fever. She's currently in the hospital. The other party explained in detail. When Jing Yunjiao heard this, she didn't say anything else and quickly asked for the hospital's address. Once she heard that it was actually her own hospital, she immediately rushed over with familiarity. When she arrived, Jing Fan Ren was lying in a normal ward with an 4 drip. There was a female police officer beside him. When the other party saw her, she was stunned for a moment. She felt that she looked familiar. "You are." The policewoman felt that the girl in front of her was very familiar. "Hello, I'm Jing Yunjiao, Jing Fan's elder sister. You were the one who informed me just now, right?" Jing Yunjiao said politely. As soon as she heard the words Jing Yunjiao, the policewoman immediately reacted. Jing Yunjiao. Wasn't she the youngest entrepreneur in the limelight? Every day, the media would report about her. Unfortunately, there weren't many photos. Even if there were a few, they were only taken from the back or the side, or from a very far angle. Therefore, they only had a vague impression. Chapter 1343. Jing Yunjiao was a girl who was more famous than a superstar. The female police officer's eyes were almost filled with hearts. She couldn't believe that the girl she had saved today was Jing Yunjiao's sister. Her luck was too good. "Is this CEO Jing?" "Hello." "That's right, I was the one who called her. She doesn't have many numbers in her phone. She only has one sister in her phone, So The female police officer was extremely excited. Although Jing Yunjiao was very young, she had done a lot of things. Especially this hospital. It would definitely make the whole of Jingju applaud. What was Ming Hospital like in the past? Although it was big, the environment wasn't good and the treatment was complicated. Ever since Jing Yunjiao took over, Ming Group's stock price kept rising. The hospital was completely reformed. From top to bottom, there wasn't a single problem. The hospital had both Chinese and Western medicine. The service attitude was much better than before and it made people feel very comfortable. Of course, the hospital was not the place that people admired and worshipped the most. The most eye-catching thing was the charity she had done. She had built bridges and roads for many poor places and sponsored some schools. There were countless people who had benefited from it. Forget about her, even if the elders in the family heard Jing Yunjiao's name, they would also give her a thumbs up and praise her. That's right, I'm her sister. Thank you for your help. Jing Yunjiao's attitude remained the same. After saying that, she walked over to check Jing Fan's pulse. Her spirit had been stimulated, so her blood flow was a little poor and her fever was serious. However, it wasn't difficult for her to reduce her fever. It seemed that Han Nan's incident had affected her greatly. Thinking about it, the reason why she was so good to Jing Fan was because she was like her in the past. She was isolated and pitiful. She had lacked love since she was young. When she thought she had met the one she was destined to meet, but in reality, she was deceived. It wasn't as simple as just falling out of love. Youthful love was always bitter. To Jing Fan, this experience was not only bitter but also a trauma. It was a shadow in his heart. She took out the fever medicine she had prepared and gave it to Jing Fan. She also gave him some medicine to calm him down. After that, Jing Yunjiao asked about the whole story in detail. Right now, the police had a lot of evidence against Han Nan. The first was Jing Fan's photo. The second and most important was the injuries on his body. The third was the recording of Jing Fan's words when he called the police. Of course, there was also the testimony of the hotel owner. It was enough to prove that Han Nan carried the unconscious Jing Fan into the room, and that the two of them didn't walk in together because they liked each other. Jing Yunjiao glanced at Jing Fan who was lying on the bed and frowned. In the end, she had forced this extremely clean girl to the point where she had to resort to underhanded means. When she saw Jing Fan at Xiong Jin and Pak Yuan's house, she saw her flickering eyes and uneasy appearance. She was worried that Jing Fan would change and that her thoughts would become a little extreme because of her experience. Fortunately, Xiong Jin's personality was gentle and it had a great influence on her. As time passed, the uneasiness in her body slowly faded away. In the end, she still had a good nature. But now that Han Nan had caused such a ruckus, she might not be as naive and trusting as before. She really didn't know whether this was a good or bad thing. Some growth was necessary, but if it was too much, life would be too sad. Chapter 1344. Jing Yunjiao sighed. Her emotions were a little complicated, but she also understood that Han Nan must have done something that she couldn't tolerate for her to make such a decision. Otherwise, if it was just using love, then with Jing Fan's temper, he would be sad, but not angry. Right now, that Han Nan is already in our custody, but his parents already know about the situation. Although this is a criminal case, if we can get your forgiveness by using Han Nan, then the sentence won't be too heavy. The female police officer reminded them. At the same time, she also told Jing Yunjiao that there was another way to solve this matter. Even if it was a criminal case, with Jing Yunjiao's status, she could make it simpler. After all, the words attempted rape didn't sound good. Jing Yunjiao was still so young. If this matter was blown up, it wouldn't be good for her future. If both parties were willing to settle this privately, then with Jing Yunjiao's ability, she could also wipe this matter clean. Although Jing Fan's confession wasn't the only evidence, the other evidence might be able to overturn Jing Fan's words. Of course, the choice was mainly up to Jing Yunjiao and Jing Fan. After the female police officer finished speaking, she left. Jing Yunjiao sat by the bed and waited. After about 1 or 2 hours, Jing Fan woke up. He was also moved to a private ward by Jing Yunjiao. It was clean and comfortable, so there was no need to hide some things from others. When Jing Fan opened her eyes and saw Jing Yunjiao, she immediately burst into tears. Sis. He really isn't a good person, millimeter. If he's not a good person, then we don't want him. When you're an adult, I'll introduce you to a good boy. Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but soften her heart. Jing Fan was sobbing. After crying, she asked, "Where is he?" "He's at the police station." Jing Yunjiao said, "Little Fan, how do you want to deal with this matter? Let him go to jail. Then it won't be good for your reputation. If we settle this privately, I can guarantee that we'll use other methods to punish him." "No need, I want to sue him." Jing Fan shook her head with a determined expression. She wanted Han Nan to forever remember the consequences of cheating on her feelings. She wanted him to never be able to wash away the dirty water of a rapist. As for her, she would study hard. As for the rest, she would think about it later. Jing Yunjiao looked at her deeply and nodded. In this era, reputation wasn't that important. In addition, Han Nan didn't succeed at all, so it wouldn't affect much. Therefore, she respected Jing Fan's decision. The injuries on Jing Yunjiao's body had already been taken for evidence. There weren't many places that needed Jing Yunjiao's help. However, when Jing Fan fell sick, she could see that he was a little childish. In order to make her feel at ease, Jing Yunjiao had been taking care of him in the ward for the past 2 days. Anyway, the hospital was hers. Wouldn't it be easy to find a place to rest? The more she interacted with him, the more she realized that Jing Fan was a person who was easily satisfied. If she was given too much, she would become fearful instead. What she wanted was just a position, a corner that was not too dazzling. However, in these 2 days, 2 groups of people came to the hospital. The first group of people was Han Nan's parents and close relatives. The other group of people was Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang, who were invited by Han Nan's parents from Huaning County. They were Jing Fan's biological parents. Han Nan found out about his parents from Jing Fan. Now that it was related to Han Nan's future, they would naturally do anything. Chapter 1345. Jing Yunjiao hadn't seen this pair of fake parents in a long time. When they went to prison, he thought that they would stop after they came out. He didn't expect that other than looking a little older, they didn't look any different from before. There were 2 children beside them, Jing Mingkai, who was spoiled like a little emperor, and Jing Fan's sister, Jing Ling big sister. "Are you okay, my good daughter? Why did you suffer so much? You were fine and you were raped. How are you going to get married in the future?" The family divided the work and cooperated. Their acting was really good. Jing Fan's face was ashen. He was still a little scared. How could attempted rape be the same as being raped? Were they really her good parents? Back then, they wanted her to drop out of school to take care of her brother. Now, they wanted her and Han Nan to make money privately. What did they take her for? Where did this shrew come from? This is a hospital, not a place for you to cry. If you cry again, I don't mind asking someone to chase you out, Jing Yunjiao said coldly. Once this voice came out, it immediately quieted down. Wang Xinfang looked at her with trembling eyes. "Big sister. We were also forced in the past. Back then, that misses he had power and influence. We didn't dare to disobey. I'm not your family's big sister. Also, the one lying on the bed is Jing Yunjiao, not Jing Xiu. Please distinguish clearly. If you want to take advantage of her, I'm afraid you've found the wrong person. Do you really think that I, Jing Yunjiao, am a vegetarian?" Jing Yunjiao was arrogant. His voice was cold, making people tremble uncontrollably. "What Jing Fan? She's clearly Xiu Er. How can I not know what my Xiu looks like?" Wang Xinfang muttered. "Miss Jing, we were wrong to recognize the wrong person back then. However, we have already been punished. Now, we just want to reunite as a family. Jing Xiu is our family's daughter. You can't stop us, right?" Jing Taijun said. "So you're saying that you insist on taking her away?" Jing Yunjiao wasn't angry. Instead, he smiled and asked, Of course. The husband and wife immediately responded. Now, Jing Xiu was no longer a cheap commodity. The life and death of the Han family's son was in the hands of her daughter. As long as her daughter listened to them, agreed to change her testimony, and gave a good explanation to the police, the case might be closed. When the time came, the Han family would give them $1 million and agree to let the two children hold a wedding banquet first. When they reached the age, they would directly get married. That was 1 million. After the couple was released from prison, they could only earn 3,000 to 4,000 yuan a month. With this 1 million yuan, they could buy a good house for their son in the county, get married, and have children. These years of hardship would finally end. Jing Yunjiao obviously knew what kind of wishful thinking they had in mind. When she heard that, she immediately called Xiong Jin and asked her to send a document over. These are her expenses for the past few years. When I first sent her to school, she was only 14 years old. Now, 3 years have passed. In these 3 years, she has learned a lot. Jing Yunjiao laughed coldly, then pointed at the list and explained in detail, her school is the best in Ning City. Even though it's not an elite school, the yearly expenses are still around 200,000, and this doesn't include her daily living expenses. Jing Fan is sensible and skipped a grade, so I'll only give you 500,000 for those 2 years. Other than that, not a single piece of clothing she wears is cheap. Spring, dawn, autumn, and winter are the 4 seasons, and every year, she would buy new clothes. In addition, she also signed up for 4 to 5 cram schools, one of which is an advanced elite education, which costs 100,000 a year. The other schools aren't that expensive, but they're still around 20 to 30,000. Chapter 1346. Other than that, it doesn't include her other expenses. For example, I bought a piano for her. Although it's not the best, it's still a few 100,000. She used to have a chauffeur to send her to and from school. Naturally, this money has to be included. Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips and sneered. Her eyes were full of contempt. Then, she slowly said, if she's Jing Fan, then as her sister, I should spend this money. But if you insist that she's Jing Xiu, then I won't stop you, but you have to pay me back all the money I spent over the years. I've calculated every single expense, and it's not much, just 1,98888. This number is quite auspicious, so I won't give you a small change. As long as you pay the money today, you can take her away at any time. Oh right, there's also the medical fees. Because this is my hospital, the fees were originally waived, but I'm afraid that's no longer possible. This single ward costs over 1,000 a day. Fortunately, the time spent here is compensated. Compared to the 2 million, it's just a small matter. If one were to carefully calculate each expense, the money spent on Jing Fan was indeed quite a lot. However, Jing Fan was indeed more sensible than the average person. She was very thrifty in her daily life. Unless it was given by her or Xiong Jin, she wouldn't ask for anything else. Thus, the 2 million could be considered as Jing Yunjiao forcing her to spend. Of course, to Jing Yunjiao, the necessary expenses were reasonable. Jing Fan was more hardworking than the average person, so she could afford the money. At this moment, even Jing Fan herself didn't expect that she had spent so much money in the past few years. She was completely dumbfounded. Previously, the school and cram school were mostly chosen by Xiong Jin. On one hand, it was because she was interested. On the other hand, most of her classmates would go to some special schools for training. Xiong Jin didn't want her to be too different from the others. Jing Fan felt a little guilty, but at the same time, he felt a little warm. Compared to the pair of parents in front of him, Jing Yunjiao was more like his real family than anyone else, even if he didn't dare to compare himself to her. Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang were both dumbfounded. Raising a child required so much money. Wang Xinfang subconsciously swallowed a mouthful of saliva. That was 2 million yuan. She and her husband might not be able to earn that much money in their entire lives. But now, in just 3 years, it had been squandered away by a girl. After a while, Wang Xinfang said, "What right do you have to ask us for money? That's because you're willing to spend it on our show, so you don't want to return it. That's not a problem. After all, Every sum of money is recorded. At worst, we'll just have to file a lawsuit. However, don't blame me for not reminding you that Han Nan's case will be settled soon. It won't wait until the lawsuit is over, Jing Yunjiao said with a faint smile. After these words, the Han couple and Jing Taijun seemed to have become mute. When they came, they had thought it through. This Jing Xiu was their daughter, and taking her away was a matter of course. However, they never expected that Jing Xiu would owe Jing Yunjiao so much money. You are taking advantage of your position to bully others. Jing Taijun, a big man, pointed at Jing Yunjiao in grief and indignation as he scolded, as if he was being persecuted. I'm not taking advantage of my position to bully others. It's more like bullying animals. Jing Yunjiao leisurely walked to the side and picked up an apple to peel it. He continued, I forgot to tell you just now. Jing Xiu is your daughter, but Jing Fan isn't. She is now my sister from the same clan. Her father's name is Jing Bai. She has nothing to do with you. Chapter 1347. This was also the reason why Jing Yunjiao wasn't surprised or angry at all. If this couple had insisted on taking Jing Fan away before the genealogy was recorded, it wouldn't be reasonable even if she forced him to stay. But now, Jing Yunjiao changed everything about Jing Fan once and for all. Even legally, her parents were no longer Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang. The peels in Jing Yunjiao's hand fell bit by bit, and the hearts of the people around them also became more and more confused. Jing Taijun and his wife also lost their confidence and became a little weak. Eldest daughter, if you don't want us to recognize Jing Xiu, it's fine if you don't want us to recognize her. But our family isn't doing well. Look at how hard your brother and sister have been living these past few years. A layer of skin has been peeled off from their faces, and they haven't even grown taller. Can you bear to see that? You can't just take care of Xiu and ignore our Ling and Ming Kai, right? Moreover, Han Nan and Xiu are boyfriend and girlfriend. It doesn't matter if something happens between them. In any case, they'll get married in the future. There's no need to make things difficult for everyone, right? Wang Xinfang said earnestly. When Jing Yunjiao heard these words, she couldn't help but admire how thick-skinned this couple was. Could it be that they had forgotten what they had done to her? Even now, they still thought that she was their daughter. If Jing Yunjiao still had a bit of a smile on her face before, then now it was completely cold. She looked at the couple in front of her and said coldly, I think the two of you feel that you haven't been in prison for long enough. As she said that, Jing Yunjiao's gaze suddenly turned to Jing Ming Kai. A child as old as you should be able to work. If you were to be sold to Heiju as a slave, the price would be a bit low, but there would definitely be people who would want you. After all, you're white and tender and have a rare appearance. Jing Yunjiao's voice was so cold that it made people feel a chill down their backs. Jing Ming Kai was the husband and wife's lifeblood. When they heard this, their hair stood on end. In their hearts, they were clear that Jing Yunjiao wasn't someone they could offend. There were a lot of rumors about Jing Yunjiao outside, and most of them were praises. She was different from the daughter they had seen in the past. Moreover, she was rich. She was rich to the point that she could do charity to earn a good reputation. In this world, there was a saying that money can make even ghosts turn millstones. Therefore, Jing Yunjiao's words, to the husband and wife, were not impossible. He immediately cowered. Don't touch Kai. We don't want to Xiu. Wang Xinfang immediately said. Jing Xiu was worth so much money, how could they afford it? But when Han Nan's parents heard this, they were unhappy. They immediately pulled Wang Xinfang over. What do you mean by this? Didn't we already agree on this? If you back out now, what about our Nan? He even called them in-laws. How anxious. But we don't have a choice. How about this? A Xiu is your family's daughter-in-law anyway. Why don't you buy her back for 2 million? Wang Xinfang said. Jing Yunjiao had really learned something. At this moment, she lowered her head to look at the frightened and resentful Jing Fan. She patted her shoulder. It was not worth it to be upset over this kind of person. They simply did not know what a treasure was. When Jing Fan was young, She woke up early and worked late to help with the housework. She was filial to her parents and had no complaints. As long as the parents were a little more considerate of their daughter, perhaps Jing Fan's heart would soften. She might even abandon Enran, who was by her side, and go to a small place to take care of her parents. Unfortunately, the parents only had one treasure, and that was the boy by their side, and not a girl like Jing Fan. Chapter 1348. Jing Yunjiao had seen quite a few people who valued boys over girls. In the eyes of these people, girls were just tools to earn money for the family, while boys carried the responsibility of inheriting the family's legacy. Naturally, they should enjoy all the pampering. But was Jing Fan bad? He wasn't bad. In fact, he was better than many people. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to get into a university. It was just that some people had eyes but failed to see. Han Nan's family background wasn't bad, but it wasn't the best either. Taking out 1 million to shut Jing Fan up was already the most he could do. Now that Wang Xinfang had asked them to buy Jing Fan back for 2 million, the couple was furious. The 2 million was for Jing Yunjiao, and Jing Fan's parents were a pair of vampires. When the time came, they would still have to give him the 1 million. In other words, they would have to fork out 3 million. 3 million. Although they were locals in the capital, how could they fork out that much money? Although they had a house and a car, they had already sold the car. Were they going to sell the house too? Even if their son was released, the family wouldn't have a place to live. They would have to sleep on the streets. How would they live? If that was the case, it would be better to let Han Nan stay in jail for a few years. After all, it was just an attempted rape. He wouldn't be sentenced to death. If he behaved well, he would be released soon. When the Han parents thought of this, they looked at Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang with disgust. You want us to spend 2 million to buy a little girl to be our wife? I think you're dreaming. She made my son so miserable. If you really marry her, she'll be a jinx, Mother Han said angrily. Wang Xinfang shrunk her head. She felt guilty. In-law, how about this? When Han Nan is released, I'll let Ling be his wife. I won't ask for 1 million as a betrothal gift. Just 50,000 will do. You can take her away now. What do you think? Wang Xinfang quickly said. Jing Yunjiao's mouth twitched. He thought that Jing Ling would be angry, but when he looked at her, a trace of joy flashed in her eyes. She almost ran to the Han parents with a pitiful look on her face. They were truly mother and daughter. Both were equally thick-skinned. However, what these two families wanted to do now had nothing to do with her. She only knew that whether it was the Han family or Jing Taijun's family, they wouldn't be able to live a good life in the future. Especially that Han Nan. He actually dared to target her and Jing Fan. How could they just pay such a small price? Jing Yunjiao immediately ordered people to chase the two families out. The security guards of this hospital were all retired soldiers. They looked fierce and righteous, which scared the two families so much that their legs turned to jelly. How would they dare to stay? However, he still felt bad. He had made a wasted trip, and hadn't absolved Han Nan of his crimes. You don't have to be disappointed. Your father is my uncle from the same clan, not Jing Taijun. Little Fan, remember this clearly. Jing Yunjiao looked at Jing Fan's disappointed face and reminded him. People always had to look forward. Those who always forgot to run back were worse than those cowardly bastards. Yes, I'll remember. From today onwards, I'm only Jing Fan. My parents are dead, and I have no siblings. In the future, my responsibility is to inherit my father's legacy. I'll remember this in my heart. Jing Fan clenched his fists and stared at the door. Her heart was made of flesh. Her biological parents only saw her as an object, so she didn't have the so-called responsibility to support them. Jing Yunjiao looked at her and nodded in satisfaction. Then, he asked the nurse to take care of her and walked out. Chapter 1349. Han Nan's case was quickly settled. After all, the crime hadn't been successful, so the sentence wasn't too heavy. With the Han family's constant persuasion, He was only sentenced to 2 years and 3 months. Jing Yunjiao didn't interfere. Although 2 years wasn't a long time, a day in prison felt like a year. She could guarantee that after 2 years, Han Nan would become a cripple. Han Nan was originally a university student with a bright future. When he was suddenly sentenced, it caused quite a stir in the school. However, due to the protection of the victims, not many people knew about Jing Fan. Occasionally, a few people would mention it, but no one would believe them. A university also expelled Han Nan from the school, so he had no future. Han Nan used to have a striking appearance, and his relatives and friends often praised him. Now that the case had been settled, the number of people who interacted with the Han family decreased by a lot. The Han family's reputation was damaged, and with Jing Yunjiao hinting behind their backs, it wasn't long before Han Nan's parents were fired. Power was useful. At least for now, no one dared to make her unhappy for the sake of Han Nan's parents. It was as difficult as ascending to the heavens for the two of them to find a job. It was the father's fault for not teaching the son well. It wasn't like she hadn't seen the parents' conduct, so she didn't have any qualms when dealing with them. In addition, Jing Yunjiao didn't hold back in prison. Han Nan's fair and clean appearance was pleasing to the eye. Previously, he had always wanted to force himself on her, but now, Jing Yunjiao had allowed someone else to press him down. The people in prison, other than a few who were forced into a corner, were all vicious criminals. There was also a hierarchy. A pretty boy like Han Nan didn't even have the slightest right to speak. Being bullied and humiliated by others was a common occurrence. What's more, even if he was a rapist, he would still be an existence that others despised even if he was in prison. No one would have any sympathy or pity for him. Jing Yunjiao deliberately let him suffer the pain of being forced. Han Nan's days were naturally miserable. Not long after, he fell ill. When he first went to prison, he still had some hope. He fantasized that after he got out, he would definitely find Jing Fan and Jing Yunjiao and make the two sisters bow down to him and admit their mistakes. He even thought of meeting some powerful people in prison who could help him in the future. However, only after coming into contact with reality did he realize that fantasies were all fragile. The prison guards had stern faces, while his fellow inmates were like starving wolves who wanted nothing more than to swallow him alive. No matter what he did, there would be people who would pick on him. Being beaten was a common occurrence. He had tried to resist, but he couldn't compare to those people in the prison. He was almost immediately caught by the prison guards, who felt that he was causing trouble and that his life would be even more difficult. He was sentenced to 2 years and 3 months. That was how long he stayed in there. When he came out, he no longer looked like a young man. He looked like he was in his 30s. He was sick all over, and there were problems in his heart. He still resented his parents for not finding a way to get him out. The Han family's life was also getting harder and harder. They had moved to a smaller house, and no one in the family went out to work. They were just sitting around and eating. When their son came out, they thought they could still count on him, but they did not expect that there would be another ancestor. There was no day of peace in the house. Chickens and dogs rose to the sky, and the neighbors despised them. Of course, this was all for later. At this time, Jing Yunjiao didn't think too much about it. He just wanted to use Han Nan's body to deal with him. It was reasonable to say that this matter had nothing to do with Jing Yunjiao's family, but the actions of the couple really made Jing Yunjiao unable to tolerate it. Chapter 1350. A few days after Han Nan was sent to prison, on the way home with Jing Tijuan's family, Jing Yunjiao found a group of people to disperse Jing Mingkai and send him to a small mountain village far away. Although that place was poor, the parents that Jing Yunjiao found for Jing Mingkai were at least able to distinguish between right and wrong. The family was poor, and there was one more person to feed. Naturally, they could not support Jing Mingkai, so every day before the sun rose, they would make Jing Mingkai work in the fields. Jing Mingkai was not young anymore, 13 years old. Children of ordinary families could not even talk about working, but he was an idiot. After arriving at the small mountain village, he thought about running away all day and night. His family did not stop him, letting him go. However, After passing a road, there was a mountain road, crooked and crooked, with no end in sight. After falling down who knew how many times, he could see that if he left his current home, only death would await him. But if he did not work, then there would be no food. He was also a smart person, so not long after, he became well-behaved, working when the sun rose, and resting when the sun set. Slowly, he seemed to have forgotten about his birth parents, and even gradually began to have a sense of right and wrong. Compared to before, he had improved a lot. A child was like a blank piece of paper. It was just that Jing Ming Kai's parents had completely destroyed this piece of paper. Now that he had smoothed it out a little, it could still be used. However, the prerequisite was that he had to continue training in this honest environment. Jing Ming Kai was Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang's flesh and blood. Their child was gone, and the two of them were almost driven crazy. Jing Yunjiao was extremely disgusted with human traffickers, and also sympathized with the parents who had lost their child, but he did not have that kind of feeling towards Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang. This good child had been raised to be a waste in their hands, and they had insulted a fresh life for nothing. Their love was like a sharp blade, and they cut the child's body with it. They were simply not worthy of being parents. Just like now, they still only had Jing Ming Kai in their eyes. After their son was gone, they beat and scolded their daughter, Jing Ling. A few days later, the restless Jing Ling also ran away. Jing Ling was already 15 years old. Since she was young, she had been more scheming than others. Now, she was even more so. How could she obediently be beaten and scolded? It was easy for Jing Yunjiao to do all this in secret. However, no matter what the reason was, it was not good to kidnap children. Jing Yunjiao could not help but feel a little uncomfortable. He asked Qin Shui to set up a fund to help some innocent parents find their kidnapped children. It could also be considered as making up for the uneasiness in his heart. After all, there were many ways to harm people. The method she used had broken her principles and bottom line. However, she felt that doing so was the best punishment for the parents, and she had no choice but to do so. Jing Yunjiao earned a lot of money, but he also spent money like water. Almost all of Yun Ling Medical's profits were used to do good deeds, which puzzled many people. There was no one who did not like money. Jing Yunjiao also loved it, but it was not to the point of obsession. He had a lot of businesses in his hands, and losing Yun Ling Medical would not affect his life, so he was open-minded. "Ah Zhao, your fund was established well. 2 days ago, old Qi also praised you in front of me for being sensible. However, although your achievements are high and your responsibility is high, as a person, you still can't be too soft-hearted." Jing Yunjiao was studying the accounts and details of the Angel Fund. Li Xiaoyun, who was next to him, sipped his tea and said. Li Xiaoyun's eyes were soft, and he completely understood her heart. "I'm not soft-hearted, but I just don't like my methods this time." Jing Yunjiao's eyes darkened. Chapter 1351. Towards people like Jing Taijun and Wang Xinfang, even if she had to kill them personally, she wouldn't feel guilty. However, they were Jing Fan's parents after all. Not acknowledging them was one thing, but killing them was another. Hence, she couldn't act recklessly. When she was in Hua Ning County, she once saved a child. That child was almost kidnapped by human traffickers. She chased after him for a few streets. At that time, she knew that although she had a great advantage in her hands, there were some things that she couldn't do no matter what. She wasn't feeling guilty towards Jing Taijun and his wife. Instead, she was reminding herself that she couldn't lose her original intention just because she had too much. "I know. Maya Zhao has a hard mouth but a soft heart. She's tough on the outside but soft on the inside." Li Xiaoyun smiled gently. Jing Yunjiao couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. "Don't. You don't sound like you're praising me. Doesn't she know me? How many people have I killed since I was reborn? She still has a hard mouth but a soft heart. If she really had a soft heart like the Virgin Mary, she probably wouldn't even have a single bone left. She would have been swallowed alive by others long ago. If you have the intention to do good, you won't be rewarded. If you don't have the intention to do evil, You won't be punished. You've done a lot of good deeds, but they weren't for fame or fortune. Although you've used some tricks, most of them were because others forced you to do them. Naturally, you shouldn't be punished. So, if you think about it, there's still a halo above your head. Li Xiaoyun laughed. Am I an angel? What halo? Why don't you say that I have wings on my back? Jing Yunjiao sneered. If you have wings, then you'll become a birdman. When that happens, He Di will definitely be happy. Do you think I can satisfy him? Li Xiaoyun snorted. Jing Yunjiao was stunned for a moment. Then, he threw a pillow at him. Being jealous of a bird, how promising. Oh right, I'm going out today. Do you want to accompany me? Jing Yunjiao asked after throwing the pillow. At this time, Li Xiaoyun was holding the pillow that Jing Yunjiao threw to him. He had already put down the cup. After hesitating for a moment, he asked, You are not usually so obedient. Who are you meeting today? In the past, whenever Jing Yunjiao went out, he would just greet his friends or people like Pak Yuan. Then, he would go to school or go home. His itinerary was not complicated, so there was no need for him to worry, and he would not need to follow him all the time. But this time, he suddenly took the initiative, so he could not help but think more. I'm going to meet someone called Young Master Lei. The other party is interested in participating in the fund donation, but he wants me to meet him. Jing Yunjiao's eyes were a little absent-minded, and he felt a little guilty. Although she was rich, it would be better if more people could participate in the foundation. The other party only asked for a meeting and did not say whether she could bring family members, so she took advantage of it. Li Xiaoyun gritted his teeth. Then if I'm not free today, you will go by yourself. En. Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips and nodded with a smile. She felt the anger in Li Xiaoyun's eyes and quickly said, But I will prepare more itching powder and things like that. If the other party is not polite, I will give them all to young Master Lei to have a taste. Itching powder? Li Xiaoyun stared at her. It was just a little itching powder. If she really brought medicine, she should use some poison. It would be best to make that blind guy waste his life and never dare to think about his woman again. You are not going? If not, then I will go by myself. Jing Yunjiao said again. She had already given him a heads up. If he got jealous later, it wouldn't be her fault. And Li Xiaoyun suddenly showed a victorious smile. Jing Yunjiao booked a Western restaurant with young Master Lei. This was her first time here. As soon as she entered the door, she was attracted by the style of the restaurant. She only saw that the lights in the room were dim and ambiguous, swaying slightly, with a bit of charm. The music in the restaurant was melodious. The waiters were all wearing tuxedos and dragging plates. It looked very pleasing to the eye. The restaurant exuded a faint fragrance of red wine, which was intoxicating. In these seats, almost all couples were looking at each other. Some were hot and passionate, some were shy and timid. Everywhere was exuding a smell of hormones. Jing Yunjiao couldn't help sweating. She felt that the man behind her seemed to be surrounded by frost. She could feel a chill. Chapter 1353. Previously, it could be said that young Master Lei was curious about her identity and invited her here to get to know him out of courtesy. But now, that theory was denied. This place was obviously a couple's restaurant, and the other party's intentions were self-evident. Jing Yunjiao pursed her lips and looked at Li Xiaoyun with a guilty conscience. After that, she took a step back and reached out to grab his arm before walking in together with him. Li Xiaoyun's expression became much better, and he whispered in her ear, "Good girl." With the waiter leading the way, the two of them went upstairs together. Jing Yunjiao looked around and finally saw a man with a white rose beside his hand. From his back, this person looked to be in his 20s. His back was slightly plump, causing Jing Yunjiao's mouth to twitch slightly. After that, she helplessly glanced at Li Xiaoyun before approaching him. Another figure appeared, and the man immediately turned to look at her. His eyes flashed with surprise. Just as he was about to speak, he noticed the man standing beside her. "Miss Jing, is it?" "This is." Young Master Lei asked hesitantly. "This is my fiancé. He happened to be passing by and sent me here," Jing Yunjiao said politely. Hearing that, the other party nodded and stared at Li Xiaoyun for a while. Then, he quickly asked the waiter to add a chair and invited the two of them to sit. Looking at this person's eagerness, Jing Yunjiao's heart was beating like a drum. She vaguely felt that she had wronged this young Master Lei. After all, his attitude was still very polite and respectful. Even though this person's appearance wasn't anything special, his actions didn't overstep any boundaries. Moreover, if he really had bad intentions towards her, he would not have let Li Xiaoyun sit down. Jing Yunjiao had always been someone who treated others with respect. She immediately found this person pleasing to the eye, and her attitude became much better. "The two of you are really a match made in heaven. But I never knew that Miss Jing had a fiancé. I'm sorry for my rudeness. May I know your name, sir?" Young Master Lei asked again. This young Master Lei was on the chubby side, with some oily pimples on his face. His looks were average, but he wasn't considered ugly. He was just a little fiercer than the average person, so he didn't look very righteous. Li Xiaoyun said simply. "Li. There aren't many rich and powerful families in the capital with the surname Li, but there's a family of generals with the surname Li," young Master Lei added. After he finished speaking, he secretly pondered in his heart. Although there was a general surnamed Li, he seemed to have heard that General Li's grandson was not young anymore. He did not know whether he was married or not, but he was sure that it was not normal. It was said that his health was not good, so he rarely went out. And if the person in front of her was the young master of the Li family, there should have been rumors about it. Even Jing Yunjiao should have expressed it in front of the media. He would not have kept it a secret when he was engaged. Since it was not the Li family, there was no problem. A warm smile appeared on young Master Lei's face. It came so suddenly that it scared Jing Yunjiao. This young Master Lei was very polite just now, and there was still some kindness on his face. Now, his smile was a little exaggerated, and it made people feel very uncomfortable. "Mr. Li should be about the same age as me, right? Which company do you work in?" Young Master Lei asked, and then he said, "Miss Jing, I donated 20 million yuan to your angel fund. I wonder if Mr. Li can be the fund manager?" At this point, he was already very direct. Jing Yunjiao exhaled, looking as if he wanted to strangle Lei Debao to death. Needless to say, Li Xiaoyun's expression was as if he had eaten a dead fly. Jing Yunjiao could already feel the murderous intent emanating from him. Li Xiaoyun had always been clean. Except for those brothers who had a good relationship with him, there were almost no outsiders who could get close to him. Today, if it weren't for the fact that he didn't want his woman to be seduced, he wouldn't have made a special trip. He didn't expect to meet such a weirdo. His stomach was churning with disgust. Miss Jing's status isn't low. With your ability, it shouldn't be hard for you to find someone of equal social status. Even though this Mr. Li's looks are a bit better, he can't possibly be General Li's grandson, right? He really doesn't match you at all. Why don't you just sell him to me in one go? You can name any price you want. What do you think? Seeing that Jing Yunjiao was unhappy, Lei Debao continued. Chapter 1355. Jing Yunjiao's eyes were burning with anger. After a few seconds, she took a deep breath, raised her hand, and directly poured the water in the cup on the table. "Sell it to you? Sell it to your uncle." Jing Yunjiao immediately cursed. In the next second, she stood up and dragged Li Xiaoyun, preparing to leave. However, before she could even take a step, her anger surged up again. She glanced at the candles used for flirting. Without another word, she picked it up and threw it under Lei Debao's lower abdomen along with the flame. In an instant, Lei Debao was so scared that he jumped up from the ground. The candles fell to the ground, but his clothes were on fire. He immediately shouted, The fire in Jing Yunjiao's heart has not been extinguished. Why would she care about him? She directly left without looking back. Take a fancy to her man. If it was a woman, she would feel a bit better. After all, women are at least a bit more pleasing to the eye. But this Lei Debao has a disgusting face, and now he actually did such a disgusting thing. If she doesn't teach him a lesson, she is afraid that she won't be able to eat for a few days. Jing Yunjiao looked angry. Her cold and arrogant attitude made it seem as if she has a monstrous enmity with Lei Debao. She strode away, and no one stopped her. The restaurant was already in a mess. However, what Jing Yunjiao didn't know was that the moment she stepped out of the door, someone downstairs was also attracted by the commotion and saw her back. That is Jing Yunjiao, right? Do you know that man? A woman in the seat asked. Jin Iran chuckled, slowly moving his knife and fork on the plate, elegantly eating, and said, Li Xiaoyun, the grandson of General Li, the only successor of the Li family. Is that so? The woman pursed her lips, and a trace of light flashed in her eyes. Jing Yunjiao, she really lived a good life these years, so good that it made her jealous. I want that man, what can you do? The woman directly said. You are my woman. Saying such words in front of me, you don't seem to give me face. Jin Iran sneered. I am not the only woman you have. Besides, I'm not just your woman. I was your brother's woman before. Didn't I still follow you? The woman wiped her hands and leaned back. Iran, I know you like Jing Yunjiao. Otherwise, with your temper, who knows how many times you would have done it already. You wouldn't be only defending and not attacking until now, right? If she marries Li Xiaoyun, you will be sad. I am doing this for your own good. Jin Yiran looked up at her and snorted coldly. You're already, yet you still want to maintain your chastity. You're right. Hong Yi was a woman he met 3 years ago. The first time he saw her, she came to his place to ask for a job. She was so young and looked so innocent, but she was very brave. Her eyes were full of restlessness, which piqued his interest. Then, he gave her to one of his brothers. She had done a good job. She had stolen a lot of resources from his brother in private, and she had also killed his brother without a complete corpse. Then, she had officially become his woman. However, this woman's temperament didn't change much. She was still pure and clean, as if those dirty nightclubs couldn't blend in with her. With her appearance, she really deceived many people. Iran, I know you. If you can't get it, you might as well destroy it. My goal is the same as yours. It shouldn't be difficult for you to give me a chance, right? Qiao Hongyi said slowly and confidently. Chapter 1356. As Qiao Hongye spoke, she touched her own face. Now, even if she stood in front of Jing Yunjiao, she probably wouldn't be able to recognize her. Back then, because of what Jing Yunjiao had said in front of the reporters, the Qiao family had completely become a target of scorn. She was also forced to leave her hometown and live a precarious life by herself. In the beginning, she took a bus and went to 2 or 3 cities. After thinking about it from left to right, she came to the capital. At that time, she only had a few hundred yuan on her and couldn't even afford to rent a house in the capital. Her body was already dirty, so she didn't mind selling herself. She found a nightclub, but she didn't expect to meet Jin Iran there. In the past 3 years, she worked for Jin Iran. She seduced his brothers, some government officials, and Jin Iran's enemies. However, she always hid in the dark and didn't show herself. Even if Jing Yunjiao had suddenly shown her talent in the past 2 years, causing her to be flustered and her heart to be in a mess, she could only endure until Jin Yiran was satisfied with her. A few months ago, when she caused the death of Jin Yiran and his brother, her face was blown up and she had to undergo surgery. After recovering, she became a completely different person. She only resembled her past self by about 20%. Originally, she wanted to stand in front of Jing Yunjiao and fight with her openly. However, she didn't expect that even her face would be taken away by God. But it didn't matter. Changing her appearance was more beneficial for her. People who are too smart usually don't have a good ending. You don't have the right to guess what I'm thinking. Jin Yiran glanced at her and said, but I do intend to send you out. There are 3 candidates. Li Xiaoyun, Xu Wencheng, and Xu Hong. One of them is Jing Yunzhao's second uncle, and the other is Jing Yunzhao's cousin. They have a higher chance of success than Li Xiaoyun. Do you want to reconsider? Jin Iran said. He was well aware of Xu Hong's identity. After all, he had used Shen Tong's sister, Shen Shi, as a pawn to gain insight into the Xu family. The latter two were closely related to the Xu family and had greater influence. What he wanted was for Xu Yuantarek to live a life worse than death. If he could use these two to infiltrate the Xu family, that would be the best outcome. The Xu family had always had strict family rules. Xu Yuantarek and his brother had a good relationship, but what he wanted was for the Xu family brothers to fight against each other. It would be best if they hated each other. But I've taken a fancy to that man just now, the man that belongs to Jing Yunzhao, Qiao Hongye said firmly. She had seen the man's appearance clearly. He was even more handsome than Jin Iran. Most importantly, she had never seen Jing Yunzhao so angry over a man before. That look of rage was completely different from before. In the past, Jing Yunzhao was made of stone. She still had some warmth towards her friends, but it was impossible for her to be so passionate towards a man. Therefore, she was moved. Since Jing Yunzhao's heart had been moved, then she wanted to snatch everything Jing Yunzhao wanted and loved, one by one. She wanted to make up for everything that Jing Yunzhao had stolen from her. With your ability, you can't do it. Jin Iran was very direct. How can you be so sure? That Li Xiaoyun is also a man, right? He also has weaknesses. Iran, no one in this world knows Jing Yunzhao better than me. We lived under the same roof for more than 10 years. I know her personality too well. The limit of her passion is also a bit cold and arrogant. No man likes this kind of woman. Chapter 1357. Qiao Hongye did not believe that Li Xiaoyun could resist her temptation. How many men had she come into contact with in the past 3 years? She already knew how to grasp a man's heart. As for Jing Yunzhao, she only knew how to put on airs. When it came to dealing with men, it was impossible for her to beat her. But didn't I take a fancy to a woman like Jing Yunzhao? Yi Zi, your arrogance and self-confidence will only kill you. Jin Iran did not take her words to heart. You only fell for her because of her uniqueness, but you fell for me more. At least in bed, I can make you happy. If we stand together, I think you would want to have a relationship with a woman like me more, right? Qiao Hongye said again. A pure appearance, a rotten and wanton heart. This was Jin Iran's evaluation of her. But it had to be said that men loved appearance, but what they wanted was wanton satisfaction. If you lose to Li Xiaoyun, you won't have another chance. But just in case, I will arrange it for you. Jin Iran put down the knife and fork in his hand and compromised. Good. Qiao Hongye was overjoyed. Finally, there was a day where she had the chance to make Jing Yunzhao suffer. When she thought of Jing Yunzhao's appearance when she lost her lover, she felt a burst of joy in her body and mind. At the same time, Jing Yunzhao, who had just left the restaurant, felt an inexplicable tightness in her heart. She subconsciously clutched her chest, feeling uncomfortable. Li Xiaoyun saw that her complexion was not good and his expression became serious. What's wrong? Where do you feel uncomfortable? It's nothing, just a little stuffy. I should be fine after opening the window for some air. Jing Yunzhao smiled and comforted. Just now, she had an ominous premonition. This kind of feeling rarely appeared. Were you disgusted by that stupid pig just now? Li Xiaoyun asked again. When he thought of that Lei Die Bao, he felt even more disgusted. Even if he remembered that person, that kind of person was not worthy of him and our Zhao to personally take action. Wasn't he a stupid person with a lot of money who wanted to smash the wall to buy her? Then in the future, I'm afraid he'll smash it until he's satisfied. Sorry, I didn't expect that person to like men. As she said this, Jing Yunzhao's mouth twitched, and she could not help but laugh. At the same time as she was angry, she was more gloating. After all, Li Xiaoyun's expression just now was too wonderful. It's a pity that she did not have a chance to take a picture of his face. Or else, it could be considered as entertainment once a year. That would be fun to watch once a year. Funny. Li Xiaoyun held his forehead silently. You too. To tus. To him. To be. You might as well laugh. Forget it. If you want to laugh, don't hold it in. Laugh as much as you want. But don't tell your second uncle when you go back, Li Xiaoyun said in a muffled voice. Xu Wencheng, that guy, had a poisonous mouth and was too scheming. If he knew about this, it was estimated that in the next few months, all kinds of perverted men would appear around him. By then, it would be troublesome. Jing Yunjiao still understood her second uncle. Of course, she knew when to stop. But now, looking at Li Xiaoyun's embarrassed state, she really could not help it. Her shoulders could not help but twitch. Even if she laughed, she was very restrained. This made Li Xiaoyun even more helpless. In the end, he simply let her be. But in his heart, he was already thinking of ways to mess with her. Chapter 1358. Li Xiaoyun wasn't someone who would take a loss. After Jing Yunjiao went back, young Master Lei's donation arrived in less than a day. It wasn't the original 20 million, but 200 million. Jing Yunjiao didn't need to think to guess that it must be Li Xiaoyun's doing. After all, the next morning, the media took a picture of Lei Debao and a man. Jing Yunjiao didn't believe it was a coincidence. Although the Li family was usually very low-key, not everyone could afford to offend them. Lei Debao dared to have thoughts about Li Xiaoyun, so he deserved it. Moreover, without guessing, if Li Xiaoyun didn't have enough ability to crush the other party, he would be oppressed by the Lei family in the future. The Angel Fund was progressing smoothly. The power behind Jing Yunjiao was too great. Even if the Li family wasn't included, Xu Yuanzi alone was enough to solve a lot of problems for her. Thus, it was quickly getting on track. Jing Yunjiao would only get busier in the future. Therefore, it didn't take long for the two families to start the engagement. Although Li Xiaoyun didn't have a good relationship with his parents, they were still related by blood. Therefore, when the two families officially met, he still had to come forward. The location was set at Yu Tianxian's private room. Li Xiaoyun and Old Master Li arrived very early, and the Xu family and Li Peixian's couple appeared around the same time. When he saw Li Peixian's wife, Wang Ruxun, Jing Yunjiao was stunned for a moment. She seemed to be a little injured, and there was a woman standing next to her. The woman was dressed elegantly and was supporting her all the way. She had a smile on her face and was very respectful. I heard from Zhao that Mr. Li and Mrs. Li were noble. Now that I see it, it's true. Uncle Li is really lucky. Xu Yuantarek stretched out his hand and said politely. Li Peixian was not a tough nut to crack. He had always been one to smile at every joke. Therefore, he said, "You're welcome. Mayor Xu's reputation is like thunder to the ears. Your talent is not something a rough person like me can compare to." Xu Yuantarek's expression froze for a moment, but he didn't nitpick. Although Li Peixian had nothing to do with him, he still worked for the government. It was just that Li Peixian was doing an idle job and was very gentle, so it was not appropriate for him to call himself a rough man. He probably wanted people to remember that his father was Li Junwei. After that, Jing Yunjiao also politely called out uncle and auntie before obediently standing beside her father and uncle. By the way, this is Zhao's biological father. Xu Yuantarek introduced him even though he was still a little uncomfortable with Jing Tianyi. This was because Li Peixian and the others had been heading straight for the Xu family as if they hadn't seen Jing Tianyi at all. After all, Jing Tianyi had changed his surname, so there was no need for him to hold on to the past. Now that Xu Yuantarek mentioned it, Li Peixian remembered that Jing Yunjiao had a father. In his heart, he had always forgotten about this matter. He even faintly felt that Jing Yunjiao was an orphan. After all, this father of hers was really too low-key. The Li family in the past was also not simple, but he had never heard anything about this man, which was why it was easy for people to overlook him. "This is Mr. Jing, right? Nice to meet you." Li Peixian greeted him sensibly in front of Li Junwei. Jing Tianyi's health had improved a lot. Although he was sitting in a wheelchair, his temperament was a little different. His face was especially pale, but he gave people a very gentle feeling, which made people respect him more. Chapter 1359. Jing Tianyi usually didn't go out at all. If it wasn't for the fact that Jing Yunzhao's lifelong happiness was at stake, he would definitely refuse this banquet. "Mr. Li is too polite. I'll have to ask you to take care of me in the future." Jing Tianyi smiled and nodded as he responded. Beside him, Wang Ruxun, Li Ying, and Li Rui couldn't help but take another look at Jing Tianyi. The two of them were about the same age as Jing Tianyi and had heard of each other's names before. Back then, Jing Tianyi's surname was Li and he was the dream lover of many women. He was even said to be the #1 young master in the capital, mainly because of his bearing and literary talent. However, at this moment, the three women were secretly disappointed. What did Jing Tianyi look like back then? His face was like jade, his eyebrows were like swords, and his eyes were like stars. Although his appearance hadn't changed much from back then, he was still old after all. His face was somewhat tired and his eyes were listless. More importantly, he was actually a cripple. "Yun Zhao, aren't you a famous doctor? You even cured Elder Qi's old illness, how could?" Li Rui looked at Jing Tianyi's legs and asked with seemingly concern. When old man Li heard this, he looked at Li Rui unhappily. Li Rui wasn't very afraid of old man Li and only restrained her expression a little. "I was the one who requested not to be treated. After so many years of sitting in a wheelchair, I'm already used to it," Jing Tianyi said. His voice was naturally gentle and magnetic, and now it was slightly hoarse, making people feel a little dazed. "Is that so? But being a normal person should be better than being a cripple, right? Mr. Jing's habits are strange." Li Rui continued to smile. When she said this, Wang Ruxun was a little surprised. It wasn't a bad thing that her sister-in-law could cause trouble. If she could make Jing Tianyi not agree to the marriage out of anger, that would be the best result. Her son was a proud son of heaven. What kind of girl couldn't he be matched with? Why did he have to be half a son-in-law of the Jing family? Although Jing Tianyi didn't usually go out, he was never stupid. In fact, he was an extremely smart person. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to learn medical skills under the pressure of Li Wenbo. His only shortcoming was that he lacked some boldness, not that he was brainless. At this moment, even a fool could sense that Li Rui was up to no good. Thus, she immediately chuckled and said, "Everyone sweeps the snow in front of their own door. Don't worry about the frost on the roof of other people's roof. Speak too much and you will lose. Madam Mo, speaking too much is not necessarily a good thing." Upon hearing this, Jing Yunzhao's eyes lit up. Although her father spoke in a roundabout manner, and there were too many words that made people dizzy, after listening carefully, she knew that his ability to scold people was not ordinary. Li Rui's husband's surname was Mo, but he had passed away a long time ago. She took care of the family business by herself and lived a comfortable life. There were no girls in Li Xiaoyun's generation, so it was convenient for outsiders to distinguish them. Sometimes, most people would call her Mrs. Li or Second Miss Li. Her husband's surname had not been given to her for a long time. Now that her father said this, it was to remind her of her identity. The second point was to tell her not to meddle in other people's business. If she spoke too much and did too much, she would be unlucky. Her father was cooped up at home all year round, reading and writing every day. He was proficient in all kinds of ancient languages. Even if he participated in the ancient imperial examinations, he would probably come back with a title. It was not wrong to say that he was a sour scholar. If she argued with him, she might be able to write an article in classical Chinese and criticize Li Rui without a single curse word. Chapter 1360. Jing Tianyi's words made Li Rui react for a while. Then, she glared at him unhappily. It was obvious that she was very angry. The group of people was still outside the restaurant. It was not appropriate to stay any longer, so they hurriedly went in together. Li Junwei and Xu Jingji, the two old men, had bad tempers, but they were very polite and respectful to each other. They chatted happily. The two old men laughed heartily, but Wang Ruxun and the others behind them secretly gritted their teeth. After sitting down, Wang Ruxun stared at Li Xiaoyun and said, "Xiaoyun, I was almost hit by a car 2 days ago." What she meant was, "Son, come and take care of me." Jing Yunjiao was not an unreasonable person, but he did not like to be treated with a warm face. Therefore, after looking at her leg, he did not take the initiative to make trouble. "I don't know if it's a bad year recently. Our two families are discussing the engagement for the two children. I wanted to buy some jewelry or something to give to Yunjiao as a meeting gift, but who knew that I would be so unlucky? As soon as I walked out of the door, a car rushed over and the jade was broken. Fortunately, Missy happened to pass by and saved my life. Although I sprained my ankle, fortunately, I'm fine." Before Li Xiaoyun could speak, Wang Ruxun continued. Jing Yunjiao pursed his lips. The room was silent and awkward. The Xu family was a group of people who were protective of their children. Jing Yunjiao, the father, was a little more rational, but he was also unhappy. After all, today was the day of the two families meeting. Neither Jing Yunjiao nor Li Xiaoyun wanted the engagement party to be too big, so now that the two sides met, it was basically the same as the engagement party, which was a happy event. However, Wang Ruxun's words made it sound like Jing Yunjiao had almost killed her. It was difficult to be happy. The Xu family pursed their lips and did not speak. It was obvious that they were dissatisfied with the Li family. What did old Master Li do in his previous life to have such a son, daughter, and daughter-in-law? The eldest daughter-in-law comes from a poor family and has no education, so she doesn't know how to speak. "In-law, please don't mind her." At this time, Li Junwei said without hesitation. This simple sentence made Wang Ruxun's eyes turn red instantly. Li Junwei had never cared about his family background. Many people knew this. When Li Peixian got married, Li Junwei didn't know much about his daughter-in-law. Many people said in front of him that the two families were not well matched. At that time, old Master Li laughed a lot and gave Wang Ruxun a lot of face. However, at this time, in front of so many people, he actually took back those words and even added that he had no manners. It was quite ruthless. "Don't say that, Uncle Li. This is not the era of the past where a girl would have to work like a cow or horse after marriage. Our Zhao is marrying Xiaoyun. Everything else is not important. Xiaoyun is just like you. I am very satisfied with his temperament and character. I also believe that he will continue to treat Zhao well. That is enough for me," said Xu Yuantarek with a smile. Jing Yunjiao only felt that the flames of war were spreading really quickly. Old Master Li was ruthless, and so was his uncle. Li Xiaoyun was leisurely picking food for her. He did not take the risk of being unfilial and provoking Wang Ruxun, but he also did not speak up for Wang Ruxun. At this time, Wang Ruxun's expression was no longer ugly. Rather, it was bitter. She felt so wronged that tears were about to fall. She looked at her son with hidden bitterness. Jing Yunjiao felt that she must be regretting it greatly. If she had not used her son to make money, Li Xiaoyun would definitely be concerned about her reputation. However, it was too late for regrets. Chapter 1361. Since Li Xiaoyun was so calm, Jing Yunjiao would not make things difficult for herself. She ate happily, but Wang Ruxun and Li Rui's gazes became sharper. "Xiaoyun, this Miss Yi is your mother's savior. You have to thank her in the future." "Oh, right, her name is Yi Chu. Your mother just acknowledged her as her goddaughter, so she'll be your godsister in the future," Li Rui said casually. Jing Yunjiao looked up at Yi Chu and pursed her lips into a smile. This woman's motive was obvious. From the moment she appeared, she had been looking at her man lovingly. However, her appearance was not bad. Her features were picturesque, and she was a pretty girl from a humble family. She even had a bit of charm. Her temperament was the complete opposite of Wang Ruxun's. Her figure was even better. Although she was shorter than Wang Ruxun, she was more delicate. Wang Ruxun guessed that many men would want to hold her in their arms and take good care of her. Brother Xiaoyun, I'll have to trouble you to take care of me in the future, Yi Chu said. Her soft voice, coupled with her slightly shy appearance, was indeed captivating. Jing Yunjiao tilted her head and looked at Li Xiaoyun. She smiled and said, "Hubby, your god-sister is calling you." Li Xiaoyun paused. A hint of surprise flashed in his eyes when he saw her. He seemed to be very satisfied with her jealousy. "Mother, it's better to be careful. Nowadays, there are many unclear relationships between godfathers and goddaughters. Don't raise an ingrate. Also, it has nothing to do with me if you two acknowledge each other as godparents. Tell her not to call me so cloyingly. It annoys me. You know how I deal with those messy women." Li Xiaoyun raised his head and said coldly. His words made Yi Chu's face turn from red to purple. Wang Ruxun was so angry that she held her breath. She turned and glared at Yi Chu. The media liked to spout nonsense. If they knew that her husband had a goddaughter, she did not know how they would mock her. Some words would get uglier the more they were said, but they could also become the truth. It was just that she really liked Yi Chu. She was gentle and weak, very obedient, and had even saved her life before. She wasn't as strong as Jing Yunjiao. If she could be together with her son, then everyone would be happy. Godmother. No, Auntie Li, don't think too much. Since young Master Li is unwilling, then I won't force him. Anyway, I didn't ask for anything else when I saved you. It's already my fortune to be able to meet you. A comforting smile appeared on Yi Chu's handsome face, which made Wang Ruxun feel a sense of guilt. This girl was so kind-hearted, but she had actually thought of something crooked. She really shouldn't have. My dear daughter, you saved my life. Xiaoyun has grown up and is not close to me. Anyway, you don't have parents. It's just right for you to stay with me in the Li clan. Wang Ruxun quickly patted Yi Chu's hand and continued, Xiaoyun has a cold personality, but is actually very sensible. Don't worry, he won't bully you. Son, I've never asked you for anything in my life. Just this one. Treat little Chu well in the future. Don't use your bad habits on her. Otherwise, I really don't want to live anymore, Wang Ruxun added. As for those bad habits. When Wang Ruxun thought back to the past, she felt a chill run down her spine. In the past, her son would go back a few times a month. At that time, she would specially introduce girls to him. However, every time that happened, her son would not hesitate to send the dogs to chase them away. Some of them were bitten by his battle wolves until they were covered in blood. Some of them broke their front teeth when they ran away. In short, they were miserable. However, he always said that a woman who could not even beat a dog was not worthy of him. Chapter 1362. Wang Ruxun's expression was soft and slightly begging. It seemed that she had made a big concession. If the Shu family didn't know that Li Xiaoyun was not close to these parents, they would have slammed the table and left. Marriage always concerned the two families. If Jing Yunjiao had to spend every day with such a mother-in-law, it would be better for her not to get married in this life. Li Xiaoyun didn't care much about Yi Chu at first. He even had no desire for his parents. However, at this time, his mother introduced another girl to him in front of the Shu family and the Jing family. It was really unbearable. He put down the things in his hand and looked at Yi Chu from head to toe. The disgust in his eyes was self-evident. Mother, are you serious? Without Miss Yi, you won't live. Li Xiaoyun looked up and stared at Wang Ruxun with a serious face. Wang Ruxun felt a little uneasy in her heart. She knew that she couldn't take back what she had said. After thinking about it, she nodded. Son, you've been working outside for so many years. The number of times I see you every month can be counted on one hand. I clearly have a son, but my son inexplicably became someone else's. Do you know how much pain I've had in my heart all these years? Although I haven't known Xiao Chu for long, these days have been the happiest days of my life. This child is filial, even better than my own. She was the daughter-in-law of the Li family, but who had looked her in the eye? Many people despised her because of her low birth. They said one thing on the surface and another behind her back. Only Yi Chu treated her wholeheartedly. Usually, she would accompany her to go shopping. Even if she was busy for the whole day, she would not say a word of tiredness. During the days she lived in the Li family, she would personally cook some sumptuous meals every day. With just one look, Yi Chu could understand her thoughts. She never showed any expression. Her gentle appearance reminded her of herself in the past. She couldn't bear to be cruel to such a girl. If she could get closer to her son, she would be satisfied no matter what she had to do. However, old Master Li's expression darkened when he saw Wang Ruxun complaining in front of so many people. "Mother, since you can't do without her and even think that she's better than me, then from today onwards, let her accompany you at home. However, there are gains and losses. In the future, our Zhao and I won't disturb you and your daughter. In addition, the few cards I left with you will all be frozen. It's not a problem for me to support you, but in the future, I will have a wife. There's no reason for me to use my own money to support an unrelated person for you, right?" Li Xiaoyun said politely. However, when Wang Ruxun heard this, her expression changed drastically. "What? You want to take the card back?" Wang Ruxun asked subconsciously, agitated. "Of course. Back when you married my father, you had already interfered with my father's assets. Now that our Zhao is my future wife, she naturally has the right to control and possess all my assets," Li Xiaoyun said matter-of-factly. He had already told Jingyun Zhao how many assets he had a long time ago. He had even expressed that he would transfer everything under her name. It was just that he was rejected by our Zhao. However, even at that time, he did not touch the money that he had left for his parents. Although he did not have deep feelings for his parents, as a child, he had a certain responsibility. Since he was a teenager, he had been giving his parents a portion of his monthly expenses. However, it seemed that it was time to stop now. If his mother had not married into the Li family but into an ordinary family, she would definitely have lived a happy and satisfied life. She would definitely be a good woman. Unfortunately, she had become Li Junwei's daughter-in-law. Her grandfather's identity was astonishing, and he had countless assets. The Li family's status was very high, and everyone respected him. However, she could only rely on this reputation to live. She could not get what she wanted at all. Therefore, she was dissatisfied and greedy. Wang Ruxun's heart ached. In the past, she had indeed found many women and called them her daughter, but that was only because she wanted to find a good wife for her son. Who would have thought that her son would be so repulsed? Is it because of little Chu? Then this goddaughter. I won't acknowledge her. Wang Ruxun was anxious, but she still said it in the end. Chapter 1364. Hearing Wang Ruchun's words, even though Jingyun Zhao didn't laugh out loud out of respect, her heart couldn't help but sigh. A moment ago, Wang Ruxun was still saying that she couldn't live without Yi Chu. The next moment, she threw her goddaughter away for the sake of money. In the end, what she wanted was money, not the so-called familial love. Even when she introduced girls to Li Xiaoyun, her purpose was very clear. She wanted to find someone easy to control, someone who would be respectful to them in the future. Rather than looking for a daughter-in-law, it was more like looking for a marionette. She did not care about Li Xiaoyun's feelings at all. "Oh, you don't want your goddaughter anymore?" Li Xiaoyun raised the corner of his lips sarcastically. "Son, aren't you forcing me to do this? If you don't provide for the household expenses, how can I afford the servants at home in the future? Won't they lose their jobs then?" Wang Ruxun also felt embarrassed and said in a low voice. In the Li family, there were only two people, Li Peixian and Wang Ruxun. However, there were many servants, drivers, and security guards. All the standards were compared to other wealthy families. The food and drink were absolutely luxurious. At this time, seeing his mother like this, Li Xiaoyun frowned. Originally, he just wanted to warn his parents, but now, it made him make up his mind. When he was in his teens, his parents complained about being poor in front of him. At that time, although his relationship with his parents was not very good, he was still soft-hearted, so he gave them some money. However, thinking about it carefully, it might be that his indulgence at the beginning had caused his parents to be in their current state. Especially his mother. Although she used to exude a petty aura, she was not a bad person and could be considered reasonable. However, those bad habits had become worse. Mother, you don't have to say anything about this matter. Since you have just made a decision, you should be responsible for your decision now. I think father's monthly money should be enough for you. As for those servants, they should be dismissed. It's enough to leave a cook. Li Xiaoyun's attitude left no room for refutation. Wang Ruchun had some hope and doubts just now. She felt that her son would not be so ruthless, but when she heard it again, her heart fell to the bottom of the valley. It was pitifully broken. Her husband's salary was only a few thousand yuan a month. Other people had hidden income, but her husband did not. At most, he would have some money in his account. However, even with all that, it would only be about 10,000 yuan. How could she live with that? He wasn't afraid of his funds shrinking. What he was afraid of was that it would be reduced by tens of times. Suddenly, Wang Ruchun became absent-minded. How could she have the energy to torment Jing Yunjiao? Jing Yunjiao was happy to be idle, and he would not take the initiative to hit the muzzle of the gun. However, during the meal, he could not help but take a few more glances at Yi Chu. "Miss Yi, are you from the capital?" Jing Yunjiao asked casually. She did not know why, but she felt that there was something wrong with the way Yi Chu looked at her. There was some hatred in his eyes. Even if he suppressed it to the extreme, she was a martial artist after all. She could still feel the faint murderous intent. If it was the first time they met, it was rare for there to be such strong emotions in it. That was why she felt it was a little strange. "Yes, I'm from the capital. However, I'm not as lucky as Miss Jing. I was born in a prestigious family. My parents were just ordinary people. Due to some accident, they passed away early." Yi Chu smiled and said amiably. Chapter 1365. Yi Chu did not seem to be affected by the words just now. It was as if everything had nothing to do with her. A normal girl would not do this. After all, everyone had their own pride. Li Xiaoyun despised her presence. Even if she was a person with a little backbone, she would definitely show some dissatisfaction. Even if she did not leave in anger, there would be some discomfort on her face. However, Yi Chu did not. She was still smiling gently like before. Her appearance was lovable. "Miss Yi seems to know me very well." Jing Yunjiao chuckled. Her eyes were filled with scrutiny. "Miss Jing, who doesn't know your name? There are many stories about you on the internet, so I know a little about you," Yi Chu said again. "Is that so? Although you say that, I don't know why, but I feel that you know me differently." Jing Yunjiao seemed to have a deeper meaning as she continued. "Miss Yi, since you know some of my past deeds, then logically speaking, you should at least be a little curious about me. Even if you aren't curious at all, you should still pay more attention to me instead of secretly sending flirtatious glances at my man." Li Xiaoyun's identity was relatively low-key. Other than a few people who were deeply involved with the military, almost no one else knew about his job. Even if they knew that he came from a wealthy family, they would not know the details. Yi Chu, on the other hand, was extremely famous. When the two of them stood together, passers-by might be stunned by Li Xiaoyun's appearance, but they would definitely be more curious about her in the next moment. However, Yi Chu did not. She looked at Yi Chu with disdain and disgust. She rarely stopped. Most of the time, she was mainly staring at Li Xiaoyun. "Miss Jing, you must have misunderstood, right? I'm closer to Auntie Li, so I'm curious about young Master Li. If I've caused a misunderstanding, then I'm really sorry. It's all my fault." Yi Chu took a step back in her attitude. Many people had used the tactic of taking a step back in order to advance in front of Jing Yunjiao. Hence, it was nothing to her. Since you know that you've caused a misunderstanding, then I'll have to trouble you to lower your head and not open your eyes. After all, this is my man. I don't like him being peeped at by women who make me uncomfortable. Otherwise, I'll really want to dig your eyes out. Jing Yunjiao became even more domineering. If it was a normal man, he would definitely sympathize with Yi Chu's weakness. He might even think that she was overbearing. However, Li Xiaoyun's taste had always been different. Miss Jing, don't you think you're going too far? My eyes are on my face. I just want to see some people and things that move my heart. Can't I do that? If that's the case, won't you have to use something to hide young Master Li when you go out in the future? Yi Chu said, feeling wronged. It would be best if you could hide it. However, there aren't many people as thick-skinned as Miss Yi in this world, so there's no need for it. Jing Yunjiao smiled coldly and showed no mercy. The corner of Yi Chu's mouth twitched. It was obvious that she was suppressing her emotions. However, she quickly calmed down. Miss Jing really knows how to joke. You're 1 year older than me. I originally wanted to take this opportunity to make friends with you. After she finished speaking, she glanced at Li Xiaoyun with a slightly wronged and affectionate look. She continued, Miss Jing has a straightforward temper. She's really worthy of being the boss of a few big companies. Her aura is nothing compared to a man's. Young Master Li, you're really lucky. She did not believe that men would like someone like Jing Yunjiao. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.